Hello, beautiful beings. How are you? Hello, love.
Hello.
Ah, okay. Ta-da. All right.
So today, um, Miss Whitney B wanted to share some information about death and about some messages from the other side, along with what she received from the Arcturians. So, why don't you start with kind of where this all started with your vision, with the information that you received about the Arcturians?
Oh, thank you, love. Yeah. So back in 2020, when pandemic first hit, we were all strapped down in the house. And I was having a lot of free time and able to channel and connect. And as I was doing some work about clearing some ancestral karma, my great grandfather, my maternal great grandfather, who I'd never met, actually, he's my great great grandfather. I'd never met him. And he came to me and he told me that my ability to channel the other dimension in that sense and to see spirits and talk to them came from his line. And he gave me a little walk through our family's history with all of these things. Particularly, he led me to my mom, and my mom has these abilities as well. And he was telling me about how our women are born and some of our men are born with these gifts, and that how to use them and how to support oneself with them. And then he invited me to take his hand and go and visit what we know as heaven. And he explained to me that it's actually not quote unquote heaven. Well, it is heaven, but it's actually the Arcturian dimension. And it is the dimension that we pass in and out of when coming and going from Earth. And this was back, gosh, like I said, it was in 2020. So this is about 4 years ago. And when he took me there, him and an Arcturian guide took me, and the first place we went in this, what I like to call the transition centers. And so what I saw was a Costco warehouse full of babies. Take out all the stuff that you would see at Costco, and just literally as far as the eye can see in every single direction are their baby bassinets and souls caretaking babies. And it's very interesting because even though we don't quote unquote have bodies in that sense, they're look like bodies. And when we get ready to come here into this physical realm and we are going to pass through the veil, meaning we're going to be born, we get small like babies to be able to fit energetically in that space. And as our avatars get ready for us, and we get small as the soul to go into the body. And I was told that this happens about 2 years, a year or two before we come. And then all these souls that I was talking about are the caretakers of these babies. And there are souls who are what are called spirit guides. In the sense, we have different levels of guides, but they caretake the small babies souls who are getting ready to come into this physical body, and they're everywhere. They are everywhere. It's so cute because they're holding them, they're talking to them, they're nurturing them, they're caregiving them, they're playing with them. It was the most beautiful thing one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. And like I said, it was literally a warehouse full. Then from this area, we then move into what I call this middle section because it was split like three sides. And this middle section is the section where souls come home, and they come and it looks like a hospital minus all the machinery. There was no like heart monitors or none of that going on, but there are these rooms with these, like, what I would consider a bed, a hospital bed. And the soul that I saw, who was my example of that, he was waving in and out between the dimensions. So he'd be in the bed, he'd not be in the bed. He'd be in the bed, he'd not be in the bed. And this process happened for a little while, which was relegated to me as the process of when we're in the physical body and we're getting ready to leave, we're in and out of our body over and over and over again until we're more in one dimension than the other. And this process can be very quick, or it can be long. It just depends on the soul and what the soul needs. And so while this beautiful being was laying in his bed and coming in and out, coming phasing in and out, because that's what it really looked like, was like phasing. His loved ones were surrounding his bed, cheering for him, rooting for him, telling them how happy they were to see him, how much they loved him, how proud they were of him, how great of a job he did. There wasn't a lot of judgment statements in the sense of like, "Oh, you did amazing." It was more about like, "We're so happy to see you. We're so happy you're home. We love you." Like just celebrating and honoring that spirit for the spirit that they are. Um, and once the man stopped phasing and was in the bed, I watched him age in reverse from his 90s, like this old wrinkled man. And as I was standing there watching it, and his family was rooting him on and talking to him and supporting him, he literally got young before my eyes. He aged backwards all the way down until he was 30. And what I was told was during that process, he's doing a life review and he's looking at all of the different experiences of his life, and all the way from an embryo and getting small all the way until the age of his death. And it was very interesting. And then as he finished that process, he literally got up out of the bed, got a clipboard, and was off. And it was amazing to me. And I was like, he got a clipboard. I was watching all of that. And it was like, okay, now that I've aged in reverse and I'm where my soul naturally sits, which looked like it was about 30. He just got up and went to go about his business, to go do whatever he wanted to do, whatever that looked like. And so what I was told, that sometimes that can look like going and helping loved ones who were in the physical body, because they're so close and had just experienced the physical body. They understand the challenges and the way things work here in this physical realm, and they're great spirit guides in that sense. And then others, like some will go and be another cheerleader for somebody coming home. Some will go work with the babies. Some will go, like I said, and help with other spirits who are here in the physical body, or prepare spirits who are getting ready to go into a physical body. So many levels of that. I think that that's a whole another podcast in itself. And then the third part was what I call the soul surfers. And what was so interesting to me about that was that when we came to that part of the dimension, there was a very distinct archway, and there were two angels standing at that archway protecting it. Another thing that was really interesting was that there was a stream, a small stream, running through the floor and around the entire space. And when I walked in, I was directly told not to touch the water. And I was like, "Don't touch the water, don't touch the water." And so I was wondering about that. And they took me, they were showing me all of this, they took me over to what I call the soul surfers. And they were on these like fountains of water. And they were like, fume, 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 all over the place, floating like this. And there were souls literally on surfboards, like hanging out. And then they would whoop, and be gone. And then the water popped back up and there'd be another soul there. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? And they told me that that is for the souls who will not be born, which means that they will go into a body without forgetting. Because when we are born, we go through the veil of forgetting. And so, since they will not be crossing the veil, they will not be forgetting. And so, there are many aspects of consciousness. This looks like, aspects of your own soul who have not crossed through the veil, as well as aspects of walk in souls who are going to have an opportunity to come in and take a body, um, and live with that knowledge without having forgotten. And so one of the examples that I have heard of personally was during there was an earthquake in LA, and one of the spiritual teachers that I experienced, she was a walk-in, and the soul who was inhabiting the body that she's in had passed and was not going to stay. And because the body was still viable, she had the opportunity to step into that soul, or to that body, and use that body with her remembrance. And that is how she had become a spiritual teacher in the first place. What was interesting to me is that she let me know that she didn't remember the other person's life because they weren't her experiences. And so one of the ways that this happens with people who have amnesia as well, like an aspect of your soul will leave and a different aspect will walk in, and they won't remember the life. Never. Because it wasn't their personal experience. Whereas if it is your soul walking in, um, your soul will remember because it's a part of your soul's personal experience. And so it's very interesting and an intricate dance. Again, we can address more of that later. But that was my adventure into the Arturian dimension. And I was led by Arturian guides and my great great grandfather. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Cool. That's an awesome experience. Thank you for sharing.
You're
Um,
welcome.
I had one question that like popped up. I know you were talking with me about this earlier, and I wondered this then, and I didn't say anything, and stood out to me. Why is the age 30 where it stops?
So I had wondered that as well. So Spirit
Yeah.
had told me that that is what is considered our maturity, our emotional, physical, spiritual maturity age is 30. You're fully grown as a spirit around 36. And so they gave me the time frame between 30 and 36 because some obviously develop quickly, a little quicker than others, but between 30 and 36 is when you reach your full spiritual maturity. And so when we age backwards, that's where we land, is at our place of maturity in that sense.
Because
Even though
that's like, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
So is that it's saying kind of that that's where, um, like our journey of being very like responsible and like conscious in a sense of some of it comes in because we're still like being formed through all of our experiences at a younger age.
Yes, because basically once you reach 36, you have reached maturity. Now you're just developing what you already have. Does that make sense? It's like you've reached like your physical human brain has developed fully, right? Like your frontal lobe and things don't fully start to develop like on those next levels where like higher thinking and stuff like that doesn't start until like 12, and then really it doesn't really start to flourish and expand on those deeper levels until you're in your 20s. And so it's like now this has been opened. Now you have to use it and practice with it to get it. And then in your 30s, like that sense of maturity comes with it, right? Like when you're a small, they're relegating it. They're showing me like a baby who's walking. When you're first, that muscle's first working, you're like stumbling and you're kind of falling around. Your head's kind of big, so you wobble and all that. But then by the time you're like 5, you're running, and it's nothing. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm just curious about it because it's I don't know, and like looking at it from like a scientific lens, I guess, like they talk about the fully like the frontal lobe and how some people never fully develop their frontal lobe. And so it makes me wonder then, are there people then that never fully achieve that spiritual like
Yes.
maturity? And so
Yes.
do they still do the regression like other
Yes.
souls, or would
Yes.
it be different? Yeah.
No, they still do it. It's just
Mm.
the thing with this physical realm is that you only have to be third dimensional. You don't have to choose to go fourth dimensional or fifth dimensional or to access those higher realms within yourself. You don't have to choose that as a human. And so some people in that sense will not develop in a physical human sense those higher realms within themselves, which is completely acceptable behavior. But what you will notice about those people is that they tend to be highly impulsive. You can tell through people's actions, their reasoning abilities, their logic, their skills, their emotional maturity, how they respond to things, how developed their mental their capacity is.
Mhm.
And some people consciously choose to have a diminished mental capacity in a physical state to experience that reality. This is why some will choose to have a body that is not capable of reaching those higher levels of consciousness in that sense. But that does not diminish their ability to be connected, if this makes sense. It is just a theme for the life that they are choosing to live, to expand their own consciousness in that physical way.
So what I understand from what you're saying is that they might not physically achieve that kind of maturity in a sense of, development or whatever in this
Correct.
physical realm. However, because they're always connected with spirit, that they
Correct.
still experience that regression because it's part of the soul's journey.
Correct. We will
Okay.
always review what and who we have been. We always come with a purpose in the sense that you are speaking about. The regression is about the purpose. It is about the understanding of the self. Also, it is just a comfort space as well. Going back to that state of being is a comfort space. Interesting. I wonder what that means. They want to talk about how people who have chosen to have a quote unquote diminished mental capacity in that sense, how they are more pure and more connected to the divine because they don't go into the separations that others will go into. So, someone who has Down syndrome can live to be 60, 70 years old, correct?
Yeah.
But their brain will not develop in the same way as yours. But that by no means does not mean that they are not learning their lesson or that they are in any way diminished from their capacity to love or to be connected to the divine. In this instance, they are more innocent and more connected to the divine due to their brain capacity. And you will notice that they actually have higher brain functioning in a different sense than the average human.
Interesting. Okay. I guess when I was thinking about that, I wasn't necessarily referring to the like Down syndrome or like I was
Mhm.
thinking more in terms of more minor development stuff. Like I don't know. Interesting. Anyways, that was very interesting.
Um, would you like to talk more about people who do not choose to emotionally or mentally mature in a sense? In the sense
That's
of,
that's that's
I see,
more what I was meaning, I think,
I see.
in
Okay.
that sense. Yeah. Like that
Okay.
makes sense for the but I think it would be a similar thing, yes? I mean,
In
different.
different
Yes.
and similar, yes. So what the key that we keep coming back to, I keep being shown over and over and over again that mental emotional maturity is a choice.
Yeah.
And one has to choose that. One has to want it.
Mhm.
And some people don't. And some people don't think that there is another way than the way that they exist. And that is enough. There doesn't
Mhm.
need to be more than that. There are those of you who strive for that dexterity and that maturity. And there are others who could care less. I think you are referring to some of the others who could care less.
Yeah, that's I think what my original question was around. Yeah.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. I misunderstood.
No, it's okay. Because the other thing was definitely useful and interesting too, to know like the whole because that's gives a look at the whole spectrum, of experience. So
There is a certain level of consciousness which you yourself has been initiated through the fourth level of consciousness, the fourth density of consciousness, where then your unity consciousness gets activated and you desire to know more, to understand yourself more, to understand your world more, and to live in that sense of expansion. Not everyone reaches that place. But once they do, there is the ability, every single being has the ability to go beyond that. But
mhm.
this is a free will world, and so it must be a choice.
Yes.
These are the people your friend calls on vacation. And that is okay.
Yeah.
Everyone makes up consciousness. All of you are an intricate, beautiful aspect of consciousness. And Earth provides such a plethora of a spectrum to experience upon. And so every aspect adds to the glory of that. And so you're just witnessing someone who has chosen whether consciously or unconsciously, to stay third dimensional. And in that third dimensional space, you will notice a lot of polarity. And so that is the life they wish to choose. Therefore, they choose that. Therefore, they exist there. And that is enough.
So it's interesting because what I understand too is that depending on the choice or conscious, unconscious, whatever the choice that people make coming here, like what their soul is learning, wanting to experience, and also what they choose while they're here, because that can shift. Yes. Um, that, oh, there you are. That no matter what that is, they're still going to have the same experience on the other side. And that there are characteristics that depending on what you choose in the physical realm, your experience there will have certain characteristics sometimes.
Correct. So your soul's
Yes.
level of development will translate with you as you transition. So
Hmm.
you will look at your life through that lens because that is the lens that you were in. Is there a higher knowing that comes with that when you transition? Yes. Yes, there is. But also, it is a representation of your physical experience and what you physically know, which you can mentally perceive. And remember, everything is a projection of your mind. And so you will hear many when they talk about the transition to heaven on earth, they will talk about pearly gates or the meadow. Many people or the light bridge, the light tunnel. These are just things that people perceive, scared me. Woo! Hello. That people perceive, therefore it is the projection of their experience.
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And so, like in your review too, that is reflected in similarly, is what you're saying, and like what you
Yes.
perceive, how you cross over, what that whole experience is like, maybe
Yes.
reflection of the choices and your understanding your soul's experience in this life.
Yes. Also, we would like to bring awareness to the oversouls um group mindset. You have many expressions of an oversoul. And when you come back, you will communicate with all the aspects of your soul. And so some of you have experienced that in a physical body where you are communicating with what others may call a past life. Well,
Mhm.
in the physical sense, time is not linear. Therefore, all lifetimes are happening at the same time. But all of these different expressions of your oversoul are aspects of you. And on a much grander scale, is every aspect of all creation an aspect of you. But you will confer with what is called your oversoul and have these conversations. Did I accomplish what I sought out to accomplish? Yes, there will be a reuniting with the oversoul, the higher mind, which many refer to it as. There will be a conference call between them in that sense.
And that is for everyone as well, yes?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
A very physical representation of that is an animal. They are their group consciousness together in a body. When you have an animal, such as a cat or a dog or a monkey, their souls, the aspects of their oversoul are all within their consciousness sharing that body in that sense. Whereas you as the human, it is one aspect of your consciousness until you consciously choose to integrate them. You have to consciously realize that is the veil of forgetting, that all of this information is available to you and a part of you. You are the sum total. Every single soul is the sum total of all of their experiences. And so, this is why they say if you want the answers, go within because you are the holder of the answer. So, every lifetime you have lived, your likes, your dislikes, the things that make you who you are, those are representations of all of your experiences as a being. Does this make sense to you?
Yes.
So, for example, when someone has a fear that they have no physical reasoning for as their body, for example, a fear of fires, and you yourself have never experienced a fire, that is often because, as your oversoul, You have experienced a tragedy with a fire. That is where the fear comes from. That is what the integration process through the human and the healing can occur through this physical body. This happens much. People are afraid of airplanes. People are, afraid of bridges. There's no reason to be afraid of a bridge in the physical experience of this person, and yet they have these fears. That is all that that is. It is a part of the subconscious. This equals danger, fear. Does does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I recently had heard something which kind of blew my mind to wrap around a little bit because I know, the mental capacity can't completely understand some of these concepts.
Correct.
Yet, in a sense, I can say, yes, I understand to my ability.
Yes.
And one of the things was they're talking about how something, we usually think of something coming from a past life, which is possible. Yet they were talking about it in terms of it can also be coming from a future life because they're all at the same time. So that it
Correct.
was like you can tap into both of those things, and sometimes it's definitely a human trait to always go, it was from the past, but it's not always from the past. Sometimes it's something that would be future in the way that we see time.
Correct. That linear sense of
Yeah.
time. The human does that so that the brain can conceptualize what is occurring in that sense, what has occurred, what is occurring, what will occur. But
Hmm.
you are very correct that in the non-linear form of what time truly is, it is all happening at the same time. Therefore, you are just as connected to that life that is 5,000 years in the future as you are to the lifetime that is supposedly 5,000 years in the past. How some of you can remember Lumeria, Atlantis, Mu, and also how some of you can channel what Earth will one day look like. They're taking me to where I was in when we were in Guatemala, and I saw, do you remember when I saw the ID cards where we're one world citizens and you can just use your
Hmm.
ID card instead of a passport to go anywhere? And that was that. That was this version of me tapping into a future version of me who is living that reality. And I was like, ta-da, world citizen ID card. Like this, yes. Women who see their children, men who see their children, or who see their deaths but young. That is you tapping into just the future version of you.
So, um, is there anything else you would like to share around the whole transition from one life to another, per se, or about um, what we, call the other side?
Yes, there's a few things that came up. So, on average, it's about 50 years before a soul chooses to incarnate again in between lifetimes, particularly when they're traveling through the same family system. So, for example, when your great grandmother passes, it will be about 50 human years before that great grandmother comes in again as another member of the family. This is very common that souls will travel through the same family lines over and over and over again with the same souls. This is a very common thread and theme. Also, when a soul transitions, at times, if a soul needs to do healing work, has had very traumatic death or very traumatic experiences that altered the mind, they will at times need to heal before they're available to communicate. This was a message that my grandmother shared with me. My great grandmother just passed on this last Sunday. And she wanted me to get on and share some messages about the death and the transition process. And one of the things that she wanted me in particular to talk about, that while she had had a very peaceful transition and a very a non-traumatic life. While she did have her challenges and her ups and downs, she had a peaceful life, and she died very peacefully in mental well-being. And so therefore it didn't she doesn't need to go heal. to be able to be well in that spirit, in that sense, in the spirit. And so she is available to talk and communicate up front, whereas some others are not able to do that and need to heal. And so the messages she wanted me in particular to share was that if your loved one is not available to talk to you right away after they've passed, know that it's not because they don't love you. Know that it's not because they aren't loved too. It's because they must heal to be in that place, to be able to then come back and communicate and share. They will always come around, depending on how traumatic the life is. For example, Hitler, he had to be healed, catacombed for like 50 years, 50 human years before he could come out and communicate and share. And so, depending on the trauma that they either did or received, will depend on how much healing their soul needs and how long they'll be in the healing catacombs. They go into what is considered like a womb space. How I saw it, how I was shown it was that like when a caterpillar forms its cocoon and gets wrapped and sits in that process of becoming, um before they transition, that is the same thing our souls do. They get wrapped in this healing space to get reconnected back to source so that they can be in a place to come back and come out healed, to go back out and do the work they want to do.
So souls that need this healing, do they often go there first and then do the regression, or does the regression happen, yeah, after the healing? Yes.
it the healing, yes, regression happens after the healing. They are immediately cocooned because they're so traumatized. They're immediately gathered and cocooned and put in this healing. They're called healing catacombs, from what I understand. What I basically seen looked like a amethyst cave, just glowing purple everywhere. And they're wrapped in this white, gossamer looking fabric and cocooned until they're ready to come out. And when they come out, it's much like a butterfly. They bring themselves out.
And so it's also, if you're not feeling a loved one around, because, some people pass and you will sense their presence, or
Right.
they'll
Yeah.
hang around for their funeral or whatever, and they'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
around to
Yeah.
communicate. But these souls that need this healing won't show up in that way. You won't feel them around. They'll be gone until
Correct.
they're finished with that process.
Correct. And if you happen to be one of those people and you're wondering about why they're not communicating with you, you can ask for spirit to bring you a message of them, and you will be told that they're healing, that they're not ready yet. But when they are ready, they will come to you and let you know. That will happen. But I like to call them emissaries. You can call to an emissary and say, "Hello, Ascended Master, God, Universe. Hello, it's me, a goddess. Can somebody please tell me what's going on with my loved one?" And you will get that message, whether it come in the form of a dream or a reading or a session or somebody like myself just having this conversation. But you will get the message that your person is healing, and that when they're ready, they'll come to you. And I think one of the easiest ways for souls, for our loved ones who passed on, to come to us is through dreams. That's what I've noticed in my, like, 20 plus years of experience, is that oftentimes it comes through a dream, unless you happen to be a person who receives visions and can do that work in that way. I also just smelled their smell. Like, you will smell their perfume, or actually, funny enough, my grandmother who passed on about 15 years ago, my dad's mom, I always knew she came to visit because it would smell like cigarettes. I woke up in the middle of the night at like 3 in the morning, so angry, thinking my dad was smoking in the house. And I get up and go stomp in his room, and he's like snoring, passed out. Nobody else is home but him and I. And then I was like, oh, of course, it's my grandma, because she loved to smoke her cigarettes. And for some reason, I don't know what it is. Not that we can physically smoke, but like it's one of the ways that like we recognize them. So, for example, when my great grandmother just passed on, the very next day I was channeling messages of her, and she like cheersed with a beer. Even though we don't drink or eat or smoke, like these are the things that are that are them. And so, my other great grandmother, who died of like 3 or 4 years ago, she cheers with a whiskey glass, with a whiskey. And they were like, her and my other great grandma, like, cheers with a beer and a whiskey. And we're like, ah! And that message in particular was for one of my loved ones who knew them like that. I didn't know them like that. So I didn't know what that was, but that was a message for them. And so they'll always find a way to communicate with you so you know it's them. Like that's just their way. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And then
Perfect.
I did have another question come up when you were talking
Yeah.
about the family lines and how souls will often wait 50 years before they reincarnate in the family line.
Yeah, that's
Um,
about the shortest. There are
the
very
shortest,
few
yeah.
exceptions to that. There are exceptions to that, but that's about the shortest amount of time.
That's what I was wondering because I have heard of souls that will come very quickly back in,
Yep.
and I'm sure that there's reasons for that, and
Yep.
maybe not into the same family line either, but
Sometimes. So it depends on the circumstances. Like when
yeah.
somebody dies against their path, like freak accidents happen where somebody will die and they didn't have it written in their chart.
Mhm.
The 9 lives thing, that's a reason. There's a reason for that because we write 9 exits usually into our charts. And so we will have these certain places where we can exit this life without any karma. And so, but when it happens against that chart, then there are extenuating circumstances where a soul can come in really quick to heal that because a healing needs to occur because it broke the family line. It broke the ties within the family. It was like an unprepared, whether conscious or unconscious, most of the time unconscious. We know when exits are coming. We know and our loved ones know. And when somebody dies tragically very fast and it's not a part of the contract, this then creates an amount of karma. And sometimes a very big impact on the loved ones. And so, in that, one of the circumstances I know of where this happened was a man was tragically killed in a drowning, saving his 2 children, and he died, and he wasn't meant to die. And his wife ended up being pregnant right after he died, like right through that. She was miraculously pregnant, and then boom, he was that soul. He went into the body of the baby. And so, that's one of the extenuating circumstances. Now, there are also souls who will go much longer before they come in. They'll wait until the perfect circumstances arise, right? Because the more advanced of a soul you are, that means the more gifts you want, the more things to play with, right? Because it can be boring. So you'll want, a lot of times we go through the same lines because of the talents and the skills and the abilities gifted in the line. So, for example, the mediumship gift that I have, that is through the line. And I will choose to come through this line again because each one of us who uses the gift expands the gift. And so, what my children will have available to them will be expanded upon what I had available to me, expanded upon what my mom had available to her, expanded upon what my grandmother had available to her. Does that make sense? And so some souls will wait 5 generations to come in because they're like, oh, give me the perfect storm. Whereas others don't care and don't need all that. They just want to come and have fun. Because really, this is a pleasure planet. You can experience anything and everything here. This planet allows for the most separation and the most pleasure in that sense. There are planets and dimensions where you can incarnate, where you can pass through the veil and still hold your physical body. This life, that's not. Well, that's not typically true. It is true, but through certain genetic and ability lines, if that makes sense to you. I happen to be one of those people who can pass through the veil back and forth while still having a physical body. But that is not the most common thing. The average person does not experience that. Though one day, through the evolution of the human, that will be true. Just like one day we will be able to choose when we get pregnant, what sex baby we want, what that looks like. That will be a conscious choice, but that happens farther up in the dimensional scales. Right now, humans are just going into fourth and fifth dimensional reality, where that's happening up in like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if that makes sense to you. Yeah, pretty interesting. You'll be able to miraculously heal yourself by your thought. That will one day be a thing. Is it a ways away? Yeah.
Is it still possible in this realm? Yes.
Yes. Yes, it
Not as
is.
common.
Not as common, but does it happen every day?
Yeah,
Yes. Yes, it
yeah.
does. And these things are being talked about more and more. They're being more consciously spread and shared more and more and more. And so through that, you will be seeing, hearing, and experiencing more of that. We inspire one another through telling our stories. And if you will notice when you look out into your world, it is much more common to hear these stories than it was before.
Did you want to share anything about, the being that came through earlier when we were talking about, the
Oh,
Arcturian place and
yes.
everything? Yes, would you like to share
Yes.
some information?
Yes. So I have the ability, I work with some of the Archurians and I also work with founders. And founders are some of the original beings who separated from the all that is. And I was working at that time, you were hearing a founder who I work with, and at times you work with as well. Many of us work with founders. Unconsciously or consciously, we're doing the work. And what they basically are just very ancient beings who hold information and are willing and happy to share that information to help us unite with the remembrance of all that we are, individually and as a collective.
If I remember correctly, the founders aren't beings that have incarnated
Some
in this
can,
way.
some can. Most often, though, they look like planets. Planet Earth is a founder. The stars that you look at, the planets that you look at, those are founders. They are also leaders of the councils. Many councils are led by founders. The founders are what many of you like to call the beings that string together the things that are floating in the universe, such as your friend calls them the ties that bind. We are the ones, when you put out the call to the universe, who bring species and beings and connections together. It is who we are, it is what we do. In that sense, you could call us weavers, like basket weavers. We weave together beings, particles, molecules, creation. It is who we are, it is what we do. We hold the birthing space for many, and we are available to all. All you must do is ask, and we shall come. I feel very connected, like I'm speaking with Bashar right now. That's how it feels. He works with the SS Ani, but underneath that, he also works with the founders. The founders are the ones who bring the SS Ani to connect with the human, who bring the Palladians to connect. They are the ones who help us glow and help us become all that we are in that sense. When the Zetas put out the call to reincarnate and to know physical body again, when they called, we came and we helped them unite so that Lumeria could be born. We are those ones. But in that sense, you are correct. We do not take physical human body in that sense. You are correct. We are a consciousness, a collective consciousness, which we want you to know everything is a collective consciousness
Yes.
on that level. That is true. That is true that the universe is but a projection of your mind. That is true. But that does not make it unreal.
That's one the human mind has trouble with.
Oh, very much so. It's very fun though. You in the human body, while you may be really frustrated by that experience and challenged by it, you will recognize as you transition and expand your consciousness that it's actually the fun of it. How much can I stretch my human mind? How far can I go beyond what I have known? That is the game. That is why we left the all. That was the point. It is the joy. It is what makes us the magicians, the alchemists that we are. The more ease and joy you can have, the more you sink into the pleasure way and the beauty way, the more you can see these things, the more laughter at the ironicness of it all. It truly is.
Yeah, I just saw the image of like being the human being is like stuffing you in this little box, and you're just like, I must do this thing.
Yes. And how can I expand beyond this box? How can
Yeah.
I remember more of all that I am and all that we are? How can I experience more of me? We are gluttons in that sense. There is such a thing as the sin called gluttony. That is us. That is us. We are truly sensory freaks in that sense. We love it. It is the reason we leave these consciousness states to come into a body, because how much can I know? How much can I experience? How much can I enjoy the illusion of separation? This is what it is when we talk about pain and suffering as pleasure. How much can I feel? How much can I know? How much can I experience as all of me? And in ways that knowing will never get you there. This is the point of the body, is you can know everything, but it's much like reading a book. You can know the knowledge by reading it, but oh, the delicacy of experiencing it. It's like a buffet for all of the senses. How much can I forget to remember? Oh gosh. Hmm. So good. Do you have any more questions? I feel like he can either communicate with us some more, or he's ready to step back and let me talk about some my grandmother and her experience. But I'm open to either. I'm open to both. We can talk a little more and ask any more questions of the founder, or we can step back and I can talk about my grandmother.
Let's talk about your grandma because that was the original
Okay.
um, pathway.
This was
Thank you though
very
for this.
this is
Yeah.
very fun. Let's do this again. We have talked much about this, and we love when you guys hold the space for us to come and join you and have these conversations. He just
Yes.
showed me the female founder that we normally talk with, and she stepped back for him to come forward. He's very excited about talking with us and sharing with us. He's like, it is a momentous occasion to be able to share with you all. We enjoy this very, very much. So please do come again.
We'll talk again.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to talk about my grandmother and her transition. So she's such a beautiful being. She wanted to talk about when she passed, or right before she passed, she was very afraid to die. She did not believe in God. She did not believe in the universe. She did not believe that there was anything beyond death. She didn't. And when she passed, she was so cute because I was talking to her and I asked her, I said, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm getting young again. I was like, you're getting young again. She's like, yes, I'm doing my life review. And let me tell you, 96 years is a lot. There's a lot to review. And in this process, she took me back with her to being an embryo and being in her mother's body and what that experience was like. It was more impressions for me rather than like a full on like dictation novel of what it was, but impressions of like being small, being in a body again, being connected to your mother. I didn't realize, like, it makes perfect sense, duh, but I never thought about it, that you're feeling every single feeling your mother is having. You're one with her soul in a way that you're not one with anybody else's soul in that sense. The only exception is when you line up with another expression of your own oversoul, what many call the twin flame, though that is not technically what it is. That is what many know it as. Those are that is the closest you can ever get to being so one with someone else. And so she was showing me about feeling all her mother's feelings and how that is a preparation for life, for physicality. That is the first time you feel things in that sense once you've come into the body. And then she took me through um, having her children. And she had 9 children. And so there were obviously older children and then the younger children. And she took me through each phase and how she was a different mother through each phase and how each child needed and received something different from her through each phase, if that makes sense. Um, and she took me through some other things through life, through her experiences as a soul. She had an experience when she had her youngest daughter where she had cervical cancer. And unbeknownst to her, the nurse had told her that she only had 5 years to live. Well, how she interpreted that was that it took 5 years off her life. And so she lived to be 96. She was a very old woman. She said, "Your limitations are the ones you give yourself." She's like, she's like, "I never thought about being old. I never thought about life beyond my now moment, really." She told me, she said, "I was a thinker, but I was a thinker about my personal stuff, like myself, what I wanted, what I liked, what I didn't like. I thought about those things, but I didn't think beyond that." And she said, so she had much fear about dying and the dying process. And she said to me, about a month before she died, she said, "Whitney, how will I know when it's time to die? How will I know when it's time to go?" And I said to her, "Well, your spirits will come for you and they'll help you transition." And she said, "My spirits, what does that mean?" And I said, "Your loved ones, the ones who've passed on, they'll come for you." And she kind of looked at me and she was like, "Huh, okay."
He wasn't sure about that.
She wasn't sure about that, not at all. And I said, that will look like your mother. That will look like your sister, your brother, your sons who've passed on, your friends. They'll come for you and they'll help you transition. And she said that she had been very afraid. And in the last like 2 weeks, um, the week before she got sick, my great grandfather, who passed on, who was an expression of her oversoul. So, in that sense, what people call a twin flame. We need a new term for that. I don't know a good term for that, but we need a new term for that. But he is another expression of her own oversoul. They share the same oversoul. And he came and he was with her in her progression of dying. He came about a week, yeah, about a week before she got really sick. She went really fast. She got really sick, and then within 2 weeks of getting really sick, she was gone, just like that. And she said he came and he held her hand. And in that 2 weeks of dying, she phased in and out of this life and the other life, back and forth. And not the other life, but the Archerian dimension, or what others know as heaven. She phased in between. So, like in the beds, the story I was talking about, where they're in the bed, she was in and out of that bed, back and forth, back and forth. And her loved ones were standing around her bed there with her to usher her forward. That is the human representation of that energy. "We love you. We're so proud of you. You've done such a good job. We're so happy to see you. Yay. You did it. Yay." And she told me right after she died that her mom came and her sister came, and that she told me I was right. So my cousin had actually passed 2 weeks before my great grandmother got sick. And she told me that she was going to come get grandma, that her and her dad, which is my uncle, were going to come get her. And when my grandma passed, she told me the next day, "You were right. They came for me and they held my hand and they took me through the portal." And so, and really, the portal is what many call the white light tunnel, just transitioning. And so they held her hand and took her through there. But she told me what she wanted me to share with people was that, as afraid she was to die, how easy it was, how peaceful it was, how loving it was, and how it wasn't scary at all in it happening. But she said to conceptualize all of that was really difficult. Like you were talking about with the human mind, to conceptualize all of that, like boom, like too much. Um, but she said she wanted people to know that it wasn't scary at all and that your people will come for you. They will. And she thanked me for telling her that, because it gave her a sense of peace and ease. And then when her souls did come, she was ready to receive them. She was happy to receive them. And it was a message for her that, okay, it's okay to go now. I can go. Because that's what she kept asking us in the last like few months of her life was like, why did I live this long? Why am I still here? What am I doing? And I looked at her and I was like, Grandma, you're just hanging out. Like, you're just here hanging out. You can go whenever you want. And that was something else she told me was that when she died, she said, I never realized how much control I actually had over the situation, that I could choose to die, that I could choose to leave. I didn't know that. So there is a point where you go past all 9 of your exits, and it's up to you when you go at that point. You can choose to stay or you can choose to go. And she just didn't realize any of those things. But it was so cute. When I was talking to her, she was like laid out, had her feet up, her little arms crossed, and she tells me, I said, "What are you doing?" She goes, "I'm relaxing and I'm getting young again." Like just this sense of total peace and ease. And that her transition process is just that, a process. And that there was no rush to it. There's just a complete relaxation, an ease, a warmth, a sense of nothing is wrong in the world. Everything is just how it is, and that's okay. And she says, so for people who are afraid to die, no, it's okay. It's not that scary in the end. It's really not. It's actually pretty easy. And you feel free. The pain really does go away. She said she wanted people to know that in her process of dying, while her physical body may have been in turmoil and pain, like her foot died, and because of how sick she was, she couldn't go to surgery and have it removed. She said, I didn't feel it at all. I thought they took my foot off. And she actually told my nana to put her foot back on, make her put her leg back on. And they didn't need to because it was already there, but that she didn't feel pain and it wasn't hard and it wasn't scary. And then the other thing she wanted me to be very clear about was that when your ancestors don't come to you, it's not because they don't love you. It's because they're healing themselves and that's what they need to do. But to remember to ask for an emissary or a help, somebody to come and bring those messages for you if that's what you want. They'll do it. They'll always do it. We're here to serve you. And so she kind of showed me this sense of becoming like a an angel helper on the other side. Her wings kind of unfurled and she looked at me and said like now I'm going to go help everybody else. She showed me some family members who are going to go through really big changes in their lives and how she would help them. And she also showed me something I was very curious about. So, I have two uncles who passed who are on the other side now, and she showed me that she was going to do work with them. And I was wondering about that myself because she showed me she's going to work with the physical, the ones of us who are still in physical body. And then she also showed me the ones who are not in physical body and how she's doing work with them. And so, what I kind of conceptualized through that, I didn't fully understand it, I'm not going to lie. But what I conceptualized through that is that they were doing soul work on the family DNA and on the things that needed to be healed for them because you take your baggage with you like a snail. You really do. You take the whole thing with you. And so, yes, you review it all, but you also recognize that there are some things you still haven't worked through that need to be worked through. And you slowly start to work through them and you start setting up another lifetime if that's what you choose to come back in and do another lifetime, which she's coming back again. She showed me that she is. She's just like, that was pretty good. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah,
in
that's
a
what
good
I
way.
saw when you mentioned your uncles, is that she was like they were helping each other heal some of the stuff that they hadn't processed before.
Yes. And that when they're ready, they're going to come back in
Mm.
again. They like to travel together. We are like that. We're pack animals in that primitive sense. Like we like to travel together. It's comfortable. It's fun. And then finding your best friend all over again in life, like, oh, the best life vibes. Like, oh, my soul. It speaks to your soul. Hello, my soul. How are you? I love you. I missed you. So good to see you. It's a joy. It truly is a joy. And then also through each lifetime, do we pick up new souls that we have those bonds with, new souls to journey with and to do the things with. And so it's so funny because it kind of feels like, you know how we do like a funeral or like a celebration of life? It's kind of like that on the other side. Just like, hey, I'm back. Hey, what's up? How you doing? Like kind of like that is how it feels to me. Like it's social hour.
Yeah.
Like, missed you. It's good to see you. What'd you accomplish? What do you want to do again? You want to be besties again? How do you want to do this? You want to be sisters? You want to be brothers? You want to be cousins? Do you want to be besties? Do you want to be neighbors? Do you want to be my enemy this time? Like, you know,
Yeah, and I in that sense, I feel that that's one of the things they talk about in, like, heaven, that, like, you see your ancestors and you're with them, but the thing that I could never get through, was, like, that you just stay there forever. I'm like, "Why
no,
would you do that?"
you
Like,
know, you
that
know.
sounds really boring.
Well,
Like, yeah, it's great to see everyone again, but, like, what's the point if you're just gonna, like, live in this weird, like, I don't know.
so there's many parts to that because some people don't ever go again. You don't
Yeah,
have to. All you can take one life and go be a spirit guide for somebody else.
yeah.
Others choose to integrate back into the all and go back into the womb space, the nothingness that is a part of the all that is. And
Mm.
then there are others who want to come again and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again, like thousands upon thousands of lives because it's fun. And we get bored. You are absolutely correct. Some of us get very bored. Others of us go and caretake like animal spirits and nurture there. Some go and are spirit guides or council members. There's so many levels of that, my friend. So many levels. I
Yeah,
think
but
that's
none of
maybe
those levels are like you just staying in that same, like, Arcturian realm forever, like, unless
mm,
you're caretaking someone else or being a guide or whatever.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You yeah. 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 Yes, you're correct. You're always going to be doing something, whether that's going back into the all to be nothing again, to go and be a part of a council or to caretake babies or to be a cheerleader on somebody else's squad or go and be a soul surfer. Like there's so many levels of that and many levels are happening on top of each other. We are omnipresent in that sense. If that makes sense to you. It's how two expressions of the same oversoul can be in a physical body at the same time in the same time frames. Some can have up to like 150, 200 expressions of one soul in a physical body on Earth at the same time or on another planet at the same time. It happens way, way more than you think it does. Or than that, you would think, not saying you in particular. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It happens all the time. It's very common. It's the clearing the path so that you can line up with one another. That's the more challenge, particularly during this phase of Earth, because there's the narcissism is at an all-time high. That happened on purpose. It's the boiling point. This happens over and over and over again through history. If you will witness and actually step back and look at history, the human history, you will see that this boiling point has happened many, many times, many, 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 many ways. But right now is a very pivotal point because we're shifting into fourth dimensional reality. And for many, that shift has already occurred. But for the masses, the head point of that will be in 27 to 30, 2027 to 2030. By 2033, everybody who's going to wake up is awake. And then that will relax again for a while, and then we'll do it again. But this is a very pivotal time. It's why so many spirits are here, and it's why so many spirits are leaving, because this is a very pivotal time in the history of Earth and of our souls. It's epic. It's literally epic.
I'm sorry, I got distracted by my, um, dog over here.
It's all good. Ugh. All right. Is there anything else? You have any questions or anything else you want to talk about before we end it?
I think that was a lot. I think you covered everything we were talking about, plus some more exciting things, so, yeah.
Yay. Yeah, I think on one of our next ones, let's talk about the expansion, the next 10 years or so, 9 years. There's about 9 years left in this completion cycle. It started back in 2018 and will fully end in 3033. It will start slowing down though in 2029. it will almost be complete. The earth part of it, at least, will be complete. But you always will notice that in the spectrum, there's souls who are a little bit of a late bloomer, quote unquote, not really, but considered that like outside of the norm on either side. And then the mass awakening in 2027, that is coming. That's going to be epic too.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, thank you, my friend, for joining us or for joining me. Thank you to all of you who are a part of this. Please feel free to ask us questions, drop any comments, let us know if there's any topics you guys want to talk about or hear about. Cheers. Have a beautiful day.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.